This video was originally presented as a Zoom meeting through Tibet House US Menla Online. To learn more about upcoming digital programming, please visit menla.org and tibethouse.us.
Greetings and welcome. We are now going to have a discussion about running toward mystery. First mystery is, where are you? Are you in Cambridge?
No. I'm out in Arizona at the moment.
Oh, you're still in Arizona?
Yeah, we got grounded here, So,
I see. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Although there was a whole very touching story about airline stewardesses and attendants and pursers.
Yeah.
They're really suffering. The airlines are giving them no equipment, and they're sitting there, and some of them are getting sick. They're like frontline workers. Terrible. Well, I'm glad you're comfortable in Phoenix. That's wonderful. So you have written a book, The Adventure of an Unconventional Life, the Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi. Even the name Tenzin Priyadarshi, it's wonderful. So I'm so happy. I was so happy. I was surprised, I must say, when I first received the PDF of the book to read it for blurbing and endorsing, and that because you're so young. But I think it's really a worthwhile book. I really like it. So, what do you have to say about it now that it's out? How does it feel?
I don't know. No, I don't think there's any particular feeling. I think right now the feeling is saturated more with what's going around. And,
really?
And I'm just more hoping that maybe there's something in the book that offers people some glimmer of hopefulness of things.
I know. Well, what do you think is the most important thing offering hope in the book? In this current problem?
I think probably some lessons on embracing change and uncertainty, by understanding impermanence better. That's one thing. And I think probably even understanding that this mode of self-isolation can actually be a fruitful mode of solitude and deeply understanding interconnectedness.
Yes.
Rather than panicking about it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
really true. And is that when you ran away from home? I was so blown away. How long have we known each other? Maybe 10, 15 years. I don't remember.
Longer. I think maybe 20.
Really?
Let's see. About over 22 years, maybe. Because I think I came to know you when I came here to do my undergrad studies.
I see. And yes, that's right. And then you're actually, I was thinking today, you're my best graduate student because I admitted you to the program, and then you went off to help people in the earthquake in Gujarat. So that means you sort of you finished the program in 0 time. Something like that. Something like that. I think it was really totally great. Wait, I'm sorry, I thought this was turned off. Totally great. And I give up, I'm very happy that you did that, actually. I really like how your story has turned out. And I love what you're doing now. I think it's just amazing. If you had gone on for 8 years of graduate studies, I don't think you would have reached what you've reached now. So, and writing a memoir already, people have been bothering me for several decades to write a memoir, and I still didn't get it done.
You should. And as I mentioned in the book, I think memoir is a funny idea for me because I'm too young for it. So it's.
Well, I don't think so, actually. Yeah. I don't think, actually, you're very old. Everyone is equally beginninglessly old. You know that. I believe that. I don't know how many of the people listening to us do think that, but I see you as coming from other lives for sure. And what you did, but this thing where what were you, 10 when you ran away? Can you talk about that a little bit more? That must have been such a freak out for your parents. I'm sort of seeing it from the parents' angle nowadays. But it was a freak out. You were what, 10 or 12 or what was
10.
it? 10.
No, I was 10, and I must have wreaked emotional havoc on my parents for sure. But I think I came to recognize that much later in my life. But at the age of 10, I don't think I was thinking too much about how others would be feeling about me leaving. And more importantly, I feel like I couldn't have helped it. Whether knowing or not, I probably would have still disappeared for at least some period of time.
It's just incredible, And then on top of that, you went to Patna, and then from there to Bodh Gaya. And why on earth did you do that? In other words, the way you presented it in the story, it's like you just sort of got off at some point, and you didn't know why. So how do you describe the guidance that brought you exactly to Fuji Guruji's place?
I don't know if I can I say that particular episode was neither rational nor irrational. It was non-rational. I cannot say that there was too much will involved. I didn't have much clarity except for, I would say, I knew that I needed to undertake the journey. But where I was going or how I was going to get there was all like a zombie episode in some ways. It was
really
like 2 days of travels of completely suspending any kind of rational thinking at that moment. I think if I was thinking too much, I might have been fearful, even to get on a train. You have seen trains in India,
It's
not a pleasant ride.
So. Yes. So it indicates that you must have, and the fact that you chose Bodh Gaya, did at least you had the idea of Buddha and Bodh Gaya in your mind?
Well,
in the place of enlightenment?
I can't say that I was aware of it. I went to Patna, then I went to Rajgir from there.
Right.
And what had kept appearing in dreams was Gridkuta, the vulture peak, which I've used as the cover image for the book.
Yes, I noticed that.
But when I was leaving, I had no idea what that spot was. I didn't even know if it had any religious significance or not. It was only after getting there that I recognized its significance.
That's amazing. But the place where you have this picture where all the people have left all the flags and things, you didn't get up there, right? You stayed at the temple at the base, right?
I did walk up there first. Yeah.
You first got up to this place. Amazing.
Yeah, I first got up to that place, and I actually was quite comfortable. Remember, there's a couple of caves underneath that area?
Yes, I do.
So I mentioned in the book that I actually was quite settled. Those days, Rajgir, you did not get that many tourists or pilgrimages.
Yes.
It was a rather quiet area.
Yes.
And I had thought that that's where I was going to spend rest of my time. And I had made myself quite comfortable in the cave below that they refer to as Ananda's cave.
I see.
And, until I was interrupted by the forest security police guys.
I see.
In my state of comfort,
And he saw this 10-year-old Brahmin boy, and he said, what are you doing? But he didn't call your parents, or he didn't know to call them, right?
Not at that moment, no.
And then you found those lovely Japanese people. So amazing. Actually, did you ever meet? I think you didn't meet Fuji himself, right?
I did not. I did not.
He passed away.
He passed away. Yeah.
That's right. But you met people very close to him who he had ordained and so on.
Right.
That's right. I think I did see him once, maybe. I forgot. What year did he die?
He passed away in, I believe, in January of 1985.
Yes, that's right. I might have actually seen him, I think. And I was a little scared of him, actually, because he was very upset with Truman, Harry Truman. And I was terrified that someone would introduce me like Thurman. And, and,
Yeah.
and I must
No,
say,
he was not. He was not a big fan of America's
no,
nuclear policy and things like that. So he had spent his entire life in the anti-nuclear movement.
what's that?
Fuji Guruji,
Yes.
his entire life was based on disarmament.
I know. And he never could forgive Truman for dropping A-bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And actually, when I read that he did that, he changed my mind. I think it was in the 70s. And I changed my mind about it because, we're educated to think that this saved lives, that it somehow helped, to shorten the war. But I eventually discovered that was a completely false rationalization. And he was really only forced to do it by the military, because they made it and they wanted to use it, But I think it was completely wrong. At least he could have dropped it in the bay, in Tokyo Bay or something, and shown them the power of it, rather first on a bunch of people, twice actually on a bunch of people.
Right.
That's really inexcusable, I think, really, kind of. Well, that brings up, I was just looking at your thing and talking about Tutu, about forgiveness. So what is the Buddhist thing about forgiveness? What do we have to say about it?
I don't think, it shows up as explicitly as it might show up in a Christian context. But I think, my reading and understanding of it is that it's a lot more about self-cultivation. So forgiveness is not so much about, other people. It's more about how we are dealing with certain actions and responses.
Right.
And that I think truly in this day and age, one as an individual, I think forgiveness is truly a very healing practice to be cultivating.
Yes.
And also I think there is some wisdom in using forgiveness at a policy level.
Yes.
Otherwise, we get into these kinds of generational vendetta, as we see in so many societies.
Yes.
And I think people have undermined the power of forgiveness as actually a social policy.
I agree. Yes, the capital punishment, for example, is
Right.
Is something that Nagarjuna in the I think Ashoka was not ready to be able to give up capital punishment, but by the time of Nagarjuna, about 200-300 years later, Nagarjuna is completely against capital punishment in the first century.
Yeah, and he actually, I think, mentions in his letter to his friend who was the king about giving other opportunity. And I know historically there has been at least one occasion that I know where a Chinese Buddhist monk, I think in the 6th or 7th century, convinced the ruler of his region to give up on capital punishment. And he asked that he would take them to his monastery, which had a bunch of farmland, and try to rehab them there. So I know that those experiments have worked from time to time when people are interested.
I didn't know that. I never heard that story, but that's really good. I wonder if he had bars on the window. On the windows of the monks' cells there, some of them. He must have had a security section if he was getting murdered.
I'm sure.
Yes. You tell the thing. So, by the way, is there some passages that you would like to read? Since we're focused on your story and the book, maybe did you pick out any particular? I'm having the book here with the picture of the Bodh Gaya thing. Which I was so surprised to see that on the cover, and I really liked it. I did. I really did. Did you ever read, by the way, a description of the Vulture Peak in Buddha's time in the Mahayana Sutra?
Yeah. Quite a few sutras.
Yes, and it's very well. I mean, a really geographical, like a real estate description, is in the Bodhisattva Shila in the Ratnakuta Sutra. Very elaborate, and it doesn't look at all like what you see when you go here now. how it's described, very much of a garden around it, in other words. Do you think it ever was really a garden in the old days?
Not sure. At least I think Venuvan was a much more cultivated garden or bamboo grove. But it was the capital city, so I'm sure they took good care of that entire region.
Yes. Are you sure this is the actual Vulture Peak, this small place, and it wasn't higher up the mountain or something? What is the evidence of that? I'm sure you investigated it.
Basically, I think because there are a bunch of Jain pilgrimage sites as well. So you can basically sort of cross-reference the names of different peaks from Buddhist and Jain literatures.
I see.
And of course, Lotus Sutra gives this reference to both the peaks, that and Ratnagiri, where the other Buddha appears, upsetting most of Buddhist philosophical assumptions of two Buddhas appearing at the same time.
Oh yeah. Well, the other one is dead. The nice thing is the other one is a mummy. I consider that the Buddhist return of the mummy.
True.
And they
I would like to think it wasn't that scary of an episode.
Well, no, it was a nice mummy. It was a nice mummy, but he made a vow that after his death, he always wanted to come back as a mummy to congratulate. Right. And then he speaks and he invites the Buddha to teach the sutra. I think and asks him to sit down next to him. So you have live Buddha and dead Buddha sitting next to each other, which I think is truly amazing. I really love it. So what about a passage? Do you have one?
I don't. This is given the circumstances that we are in. This is actually the first sort of public thing with the book.
Yes.
I'm not that experienced in book appearances and things of that nature. So I generally found book reading not very useful. But I haven't picked a passage.
But I love it. I think that's. I love the thing with you and Father Keating.
Yeah.
Where you didn't necessarily like the academic. I want to read something. Then I'll read you something. 196. By the time I was accepted for graduate studies at Harvard Divinity School, I had lost patience with the easy resort to repeating, quote, "My religion is good, your religion is good," unquote. I was ready to grapple with the problems that I knew were deeply entrenched, where real harm had been done. I wanted to see genuine engagement that would make a difference where it counted. So when the orientation session on my first day there offered up a mix of vague abstraction and vacuous platitudes on the subject of interreligious understanding, along with self-congratulatory gestures of inclusion, I tuned out and left my seat for a quick errand to drop off some paperwork across the way. I really like that. I like that because I know that place. I was a graduate student there, but I didn't spend much time at the Divinity School. I was in what they call the yard there.
Right.
Like the yard where the main convicts were. I think that I was thinking when I was reading the thing about forgiveness that we do have the third type of patience.
Mm-hmm.
And the three types of patience, and the third one is called the patience of non-retaliation.
Yes.
So it's a sort of Buddhist minimalist way of saying forgiveness, that you're not going to retaliate. It's it's like saying, instead of saying compassion, they say non-hatred first. First you have to get where you're not hating people anymore, and then you can be compassionate toward them. That's very Buddhist, I think. So, and if you read Shantideva's passages there, he's really pretty much talking about forgiveness, I think.
Yeah, I think that the techniques are very much present, like most things. During one conversation with a Christian priest friend, I mentioned that Jesus might have suggested that we should turn the other cheek, but it's actually the Buddhists who are giving the techniques of how to do that. So rather than just giving the dictums of forgiveness, I think great masters like Shantideva give very sort of methodical techniques of how individuals or societies can train themselves.
Yes.
and restraint and self-restraint, I think, remains sort of a pinnacle of training, because again, our instinctual behavior is such that we can react and respond in so many ways.
Yes.
But it is really this training of self-restraint that allows us to perhaps take a pause, evaluate, think about the merits and demerits of a particular response, and
Yes.
and that's really the most beautiful thing about it.
It is. It is. It is. I love that. Yes.
But that thing that you mentioned about Father Keating, I mean, he was. Did you meet him?
Whoops. I don't know what that. Okay.
Yeah. Did you meet Father Keating, Bob?
Yes, I met him a couple of times,
Right.
but actually, I kind of knew a lot about him in the early days, because you probably never met Tai Uno. I think you probably never did. He was a professor of Buddhism at Smith College for many years. He passed away a few years back, and I don't think you ever met him. But he was very close with Father Keating, and Father Keating used to have him go to Spencer, Mass, to the monastery he had in Spencer. He was the abbot of in Spencer, Mass, and he invite the Roshi from Los Angeles. What's his name?
Joshu Sasaki. Yeah.
Which one?
Joshu Sasaki.
Yes, Sasaki Roshi. Yes.
Yeah.
And Sasaki Roshi used to teach, hold zazens with his monks.
Yeah.
And he used to visit and give talks. And then Father Keating said, "Could you come and spend some time and hold zazen with us?" And Sasaki didn't translate, so Uno was always with him translating, Professor Uno. And so I heard all these stories, and then he says, "The only way I can do a zazen with your monks is if you give me your abbot's robe. You have to dress me as an abbot, or I won't be able to do zazen with them," he said. And as you know, Father Keating was 6'3" or 4?
Yeah.
And Sasaki was 5'1", So they had to trim down some kind of a robe. And then he did it. He used to regularly go there and do zazen, and he really liked Keating. He thought Keating was truly, really great. And that, he kind of gave him the Zen seal, or whatever you would call it, he did, according to Uno. And Uno himself loved Father Keating. He used to invite him to Smith College. That was before Keating went to Colorado. So yeah, I did, but I didn't have such a deep relation as you traveling with him. That's wonderful how you discussed that. And your thing about silence, it's marvelous. I really like it.
He was a remarkable individual.
He really was. And did you go to Snow Mass and actually meditate with him there?
Yeah, quite a bit actually, because he had offered his one of the hermitages in his monastery if I ever wanted to escape Cambridge and the academic environment. So
yes.
So I would take that opportunity quite often, and
that's amazing.
Be able to spend some time with him.
That's really great. I think it's wonderful. I hope Francis, I don't know where Francis will be able to come out on that Pope, the new Pope.
Yeah.
And, but from Vatican II, there was this thing where you could really sort of be yourself as a member of another religion with other people, and without just that superficial thing, and you could sort of do your own practice and they could do their practice. And there was a way where you could respect them and actually be pleased with what you were doing without feeling you were putting down what they were doing.
Right.
Sort of that's the key thing. And I like your way. If you say that one thing is to tell people to be forgiving and turn the other cheek, and non-violent and non-harmful, but the other thing is to have a method to do it. And so you can fit the method together with the belief and with the theology and all that without disturbing the theology,
Right.
It's just if people can hold the theology lightly, a little bit,
right.
And not condemn each other, that's the hard, do you feel there are some things that could be changed in the different religions like that?
I think so. I think of course the worldview and the historicity around the worldview is one thing, but when it comes to sort of practice and sort of deeply understanding even the theoretical framework, there's quite a bit that we can truly learn from each other, and that's why I liked Father Keating's approach of interspiritual conversation.
Yes. Yes.
Rather than interreligious, because he said we all pretty much are well versed in understanding the history of various religions, but let's talk about how a contemporary practitioner sort of adapts to it, and whether we can learn from each other or not. And so I used to jokingly say, Keating, as I've mentioned in a quote, which I'm paraphrasing, that Keating said that silence is the first language of God. Rest all is bad translation. And so there would be these moments that we would get into these deep philosophical nuances, and then we'll just sit quietly, looking at the aspen tree or the mountains outside the thing, and it was quite remarkable.
Yes. Did he know about the silence of Vimalakirti?
He did. He did. We used to talk a lot.
Really?
But you should please mention it for the benefit of others who are participating here.
Yeah. Well, there was a famous thing where, in the context of deep philosophical and theological and whatever, deep probing this conversation about the nature of ultimate reality, I guess in Christian it would be nature of God, nature of freedom, emptiness, nature of Buddhahood, the Buddha reality body, the Dharmakaya. In that context, silence, when you're kind of an authority, there's a famous one where 32 bodhisattvas, one of whom was Priyadarshi, by the way. Priyadarshana, actually.
Priyadarshan.
Darshana, that same thing.
That some legends suggest that later on became Nagarjuna, right?
Yes, that's right. The Tsongkhapa says that Priyadarshi. And anyway, and that was in Vaishali, actually, your hometown. So anyway, this 32 bodhisattvas had all said something really deep about non-duality, the Dharma door of non-duality. And then after those 32 bodhisattvas, then Manjushri, he says, well, you guys did great, Nirvana and Samsara are non-dual, those who think that they're different, it's wrong, life and death, everything, any kind of duality, they had all crushed, and just by saying that they aren't different. And then Manjushri says, well, you guys did great, but the one problem is you said something, and you can't say anything about the ultimate reality. So then, of course, like a perfect straight man, he turns to Vimalakirti and he says, Vimalakirti, what do you say? Silence. And then Vimalakirti doesn't speak. And then thousands of people in the wonderful effusive way they write those sutras, thousands of people had deep insights and deep realizations at that time. And so it was called the lion's roar of the silence of Vimalakirti. It's called. But then in teaching students, in my classes, there's another silence earlier in the book, where there's a goddess who asks the Saint Shariputra, the Arhat Shariputra, the foremost wise disciple of the Buddha, Theravada disciple of the Buddha. He asked him, how long have you been in nirvana? How long have you been in nirvana? So there was an earlier thing where this kind of implying he was aware of what nirvana was. And so the lady, the goddess, asked him, like, well, how long have you been in nirvana? And then he didn't speak. And then she says, why not answer the question? Has the cat got your tongue? Etc. And then he says, well, I didn't say anything because you can't say anything about nirvana. And then she goes on and actually she critiques that silence. Right. So I always used to ask students, what's the difference? And I think your silence with Father Keating is like Vimalakirti's silence, not like Shariputra's silence. But I got lots of papers over 50 years on that topic. from many students. I should have collected them all, actually. It's a good thing to ask, you know.
It's a phenomenal text, and I think there could be a Hollywood version of it.
I know. I was thinking of it. Peter Sellers wants to make an opera out of it. And various Zen centers have dramatized various aspects, especially the conversation between Shariputra and the goddess. They've especially done that. But I think the whole thing deserves the whole early discussion with the young youths from Vaishali and that moment of silence, the famous one. And then these beings who come from another universe. That's also very interesting discussion. So you could have great arias describing the other universes and the heavenly planes and things like that. I think it's something that should be done, definitely. I think maybe you can do that before you write your next memoir. So you're going to write one in about 30 years from now, another one, I'm sure. You know? This is so really good book, you know. I hope everybody who's listening, I don't know how many people are listening, but I hope they all have the book.
There are about 120 or so, I think.
That's so nice. That means people who really like you, that's really, really good, you know. You know, terrible. You said, you weren't liking your school. Was it? Where was it? Oh yeah, on the flight 30,000 feet above nowhere, I made a decision, late as it was, to stop making my parents miserable. The only way I could see to do that was to give up my practice. No more meditation, no more prayers, and turn my back on the spiritual life. I would fill the hole that was left by studying hard. But then you didn't like it.
Well, it was quite challenging, I think, for a variety of reasons. I think, you know, most simple explanation that people used to give was culture shock. You know, putting a 17-year-old kid into the United States in a senior year of high school. But I think it was more than that. It was just you know, coming to this recognition that you know, I mean, at that point it was more like, you know, what's the point of practice if it is creating so much misery for people around me, especially my family. And I'm saying that knowing that my sister from Mumbai is actually watching this conversation.
Oh, really? So which one? Shilpa?
Shilpa, yeah, because Shilpa.
Oh,
is such
hello,
a big fan of yours.
Shilpa. How
She's
nice.
There, so.
Oh, that's so nice. That's wonderful. Well, I hope she's staying safe and it's isolated there. And your mother, I hope. How is your mother?
She's good. She's in Mithila at the moment.
Oh, really? In a country site, you mean?
Countryside, yeah.
Oh, that's good. And she has someone helping her and so on.
Yeah.
That's really important. Wonderful. That's really great. Oh, here, I was a seeker. If my understanding, this is page 56. I think I particularly like this one. If my understanding of the philosophy was basic at that age, you're talking about Advaita Vedanta, Kashmir Shaivism, and this kind of thing. The devotional tone of what I was learning resonated deeply in my being. It often found expression in the songs that I first heard from Baul singers, wandering on the train and then tracked down to their community in Kolkata. I pressed them to teach me, and I sang like they did about the crazy devotee on the riverbank calling the name of the Lord over and over in ecstasy, or the funny song that pictured Allah, Hari, Ram, and Kali sharing a table together in a restaurant.
Yes.
When I teased them that their anklets were what women wore, they corrected me. There is no such thing as women or men. The divine is alive inside every body, end quote. That's really cool. You had all these adventures, you know. And
the Baul singers, I don't know if you, you know, they're mostly now concentrated near the areas of Birbhum, near Shanti Niketan, the university that Rabindranath Tagore.
Yes. I went there once, but very briefly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But in the history of Baul singers, you know, they even have all the all the Charya Giti tradition,
Yes,
So
they do. They do. Like the Mahasiddhas, yeah, the great
the Mahasiddhas,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
And so even without having much familiarity at that stage from the Buddhist side of the Mahasiddha tradition, being with the bows and then trying to, singing these songs and verses of Charya Giti, and then it was truly remarkable. I mean,
It
those
really
childhood
was.
days, yeah.
It really
Truly
was.
remarkable. Yeah.
And you just totally had the taste of it, I think it's so cool, Here you are, you're born in India, in this great Vaishali, which means, as you know, Vaishali means expansive or magnificent,
Right.
vast. Vaishali means the city that had vastness. So it was a huge city in the descriptions of that city, very wealthy city. And Buddha liked to teach there, and a lot of the tantras, the medicine Buddha revelation was given there, according to Mahayana, and a lot of the tantras were taught nearby Vaishali.
And the first Bhikkhuni order, the order of Buddhist nuns, was also created in Vaishali.
Really, was Amrapali involved in that? Did she?
Amrapali was there. No, Ananda was the one who sort of pleaded Buddha quite a bit. After
Yes.
Buddha's aunt had asked him a couple of times.
Oh, yes, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, to be nuns, yes, well, yeah.
To be nuns. And Vaishali was the place where
Yes.
Buddha sort of gave in to the request and agreed to ordain nuns.
I know, he did. But, he was afraid of people wrongly think, or I don't know, what do you think? Why do you think Buddha hesitated and said no twice to his ex-wife and to his foster mother aunt? Why did he say no twice before Ananda pleaded with him?
I think of course the cultural aspect is something to be aware of during that time, because even a monastic order was seen as a rebellious thing.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to Buddhism, yes, there were monks, but they were more like sannyasis.
Yes.
It wasn't an organized order, so to speak.
Yes.
And Buddha created this organized monastic order that went against quite a few Brahmanical senses.
Absolutely.
And there were aspects of a renunciant's life, wandering, begging during the day, that posed a lot of security risks and challenges as well.
Yes.
And I think all of those issues were probably part of his concerns.
Yes. And then his prediction that they would shorten the life of the Sangha in general.
Yeah.
And particularly of their own order. I think that prediction of his was actually correct.
True.
And the very sad thing, I've recently, in doing some work on Tantra, I noticed that from the time that becomes really important in Buddhism and in Hinduism as well, around 6th century in my argument, not 9th or 10th century, but 6th century, 6th, 7th century, there are not very many nuns. So there was, by that time, the society as a whole was not supporting the nuns properly.
Yep.
So therefore, there weren't many nuns. There was no female Nalanda, in other words. And so therefore, they were not educated with the sort of prerequisites of being able to do the siddha sort of thing. So therefore, the Tantra seemed more male-oriented, because there was not so many, there wasn't a population ready to do that, because of the intolerance on the part of the Gupta era people for the large bodies of female celibates. They wanted them out there working.
Yeah.
They wanted to enslave them back in the household, the patriarchal society. I think that's still the case, actually. I don't think it's only ancient time. The patriarchal thing is still so strong. But now, therefore, I'm really happy about the geisha monks. I don't know any geisha monks. Do you know the geisha monks? Have you met them?
Yeah, I met a couple of them from Ladakh who have sort of qualified as geisha monks after His Holiness encouraged the idea of giving them similar stature.
So they're sort of the PhDs, like the equivalent of a PhD, right? Did you have any good discussions with any of them?
With some of them, yeah. I think I had mostly asked them if playfully if they had also been debating with the monks in Dharamshala,
Yes.
and what the response of the monks was,
Yes.
and what did they think about the traditional debate methods and so on. The
What
ones
did
that
they
I met
say?
were quite modest, but very brilliant.
Yes.
They had memorized the text and could articulate very well.
Really? So you didn't dare debate with them?
No.
I don't
I'm
think
too
I
tired
would.
of debate.
I don't think I would want to debate with them either. I agree with that.
I'm kind of debated out these days.
Yes. I agree. Well, that's wonderful. So now, how about the Center for Values? Can you tell us more? Some of the people might not know that. You started it at MIT, right?
Yes.
And how did that happen? I don't know. You don't give that much detail institutionally. The amazing thing about doing this at MIT is quite amazing.
Well, thank you. It was it was. Well, one thing is, there are a bunch of things that I'm hoping to address in if I get an opportunity to write something else.
Yes.
So the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics is one thing, but also
Yes.
in this book, I haven't mentioned too much about my relationship with His Holiness either.
Yes, I noticed that. I was surprised. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because as I was reflecting on it, I realized that putting it simply in a chapter or two would not do justice to the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope is to reflect more deeply on it, and perhaps in a future time to have something more in depth about the Guru Shishya relationship between His Holiness and myself.
Do you feel he's kind of your root guru? He's like your root guru nowadays?
Definitely.
Is he, or
definitely.
you feel he is? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think if it wasn't for him, I probably would not have been able to convince my parents either way, and so I think a lot has to do with his own presence and persuasion. I don't know if I mentioned in the book in this thing. It took my parents almost 18 years to agree to see His Holiness.
Mm-hmm. You had told me that before. I'd forget if it's in the book or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 18 years. So
I know.
So, if it wasn't, I think because of his blessing and persuasion, things might have unfolded differently. I don't know how different, but differently. So, but one of the things with his blessing that I was able to sort of be a kind of a facilitator or an instrument in is thinking deeply about the role of ethics and values in contemporary education. And having gone through the episode of building temples and stupas and so on, when His Holiness's call for building a more ethical society became stronger somewhat 15-20 years ago, when he was really talking about it a lot in the framework of secular ethics. And my own observations by that time in academia, especially even in the US, where ethics was simply, either an undergraduate course that you took in some Jesuit university, unless you were a philosophy major or had a bent of mind towards liberal arts. And so it really began as a challenge as to how to create an avenue or a platform where we could have more, ethical conversations and ethical framing, or as I would like to say, is how to build ethical imagination in current and future generations. And so that is what the center is striving for, and it has been doing quite well, and now its programs are in about 10 countries or so.
Really, 10 countries? 10 countries?
10 countries, yeah.
Well, I know Colombia, India,
Japan, Colombia, India, Japan, Mexico,
Canada,
India, Indonesia, Singapore, and then we have
U.S.
2 African countries. Yeah.
2 African, which ones?
We have in Uganda and also in South Africa through our partners.
Oh, that's so great. That's good. And do you go to all of them, you know, whirling around?
In the beginning days, yes, I went to all of them. And I was traveling a fair amount. These days, I'm trying to limit it, and I have other colleagues who are doing some part of the travel.
Well, I think we should get you a sailboat like Greta Thunberg has. So you don't have to fly so much. You can go in that nice sailboat that she has. Go everywhere. I think that would be really good. So you don't have to like plant so many trees as an offset.
Yeah, I had quite a few friends and colleagues who had started doing carbon offset for my flight over the years. Yeah.
Good. That's very good. I think that's just totally wonderful. I think also, how about, why don't we work together now that I'm retired? I'm ready for more jobs. I'll never be as free as you, since you're the most free, the Buddhist monk, bhikshu, mendicant rather, the Buddhist mendicant, as I prefer to call them, bhikshu properly means. You're the most free. You're much more free than any lay person or someone who has to have a job and all this. But now I'm retired. So why don't we try to revive this Nalanda University right there in India, in Bihar, in your home state?
Yes.
I think that should be a project. You know, why don't you? Is Nitish Kumar? Isn't that his name? What's his name?
Yeah, that's the chief minister.
Is he still the chief minister there?
Yes.
So why don't we propose that? They fell flat, the one that they tried to do from the government with hiring these people who were scientists, you know, and sociologists, you know, who didn't want to wanted it to be all secular. That's ridiculous. It should be beyond secular and non-secular. It should be non-dual of secular, non-secular, and it could start as one of the centers of your ethics thing. How about that?
Yeah, no, that'll be phenomenal. And while we are on this topic of secular, I think you know, just to generate some interest in people who are watching this, you know, when His Holiness talks about secular, he talks about secular in how the Indian tradition spoke of secular.
Yes.
Which is not so much about separation of church and state or steering away from religion. You know, religion is going to remain a vital form of knowledge, of platform, of institution. It'll metamorphosize. Of course, it'll change. Outdated traditions will go away. New traditions will be coming. But the Indians always thought of secular as Sarva Dharma Sambhav. You know, the meeting point of all religions. The idea was not so much that let's get rid of religion. The idea was, let's create a forum where we can talk about all religions.
Yes, absolutely.
Platform. And I think that would be a wonderful thing to do, and to create sort of a new spirit of Nalanda.
Yes. I think we must do that. We really, really must do that. You know, it reminds me. You know, I'm so happy that you did it. When I was teaching at Amherst College in the 70s. Within 1 year, in the first year, I think, when I was designing courses, I designed a course and taught a course called Buddhist Ethics. And at that college, which is a small college, they have the tradition of any new course from any department is aired in the large faculty meeting, which is mandatory because there were only like 120 people, 150, but some on leave, you know, 120 people on the faculty. So you had to go to all the faculty meetings. And then you would discuss courses, the faculty would, in the whole body, you know. So someone said to me, oh, how can you teach a course in Buddhist ethics? The Buddhists don't have any ethics, they said. I said, what do you mean? How can you say that? And they said, well, I don't mean they don't do good things. He says, I mean that they don't have a self, and therefore they couldn't have ethics. Because ethics, as we Protestants, you know, define it, is restraining all the negative impulses of the self by, you know, using the rules and principles, categorical imperative, golden rule, etc., whatever it is, you know, to restrain the negative drives of the self, you know. And you don't have a self, so if you happen to do a good thing, Buddhists just kind of just do it, you know. They don't have any thought, a philosophical thought about it. So I argued that that was completely wrong and they misunderstood selflessness and what it really means and blah, blah, blah. In fact, they were highly responsible of their individual manifestations, even more because they had no rigid fixed self, etc. And then they finally swallowed it and I got approval for the course. And within 2 years, there was a course in Christian ethics, Jewish ethics, Muslim ethics. They were all doing it. And then on one dinner or something, my Christian colleagues thanked me for teaching Buddhist ethics because they said they couldn't have taught that because if they tried to teach Christian ethics, they would have been accused, because they were Christians, of sort of opening up the chapel or something, having the chapel, the college chapel intrude in the academic curriculum. Right. You know what I'm saying? But by doing something, because of the pluralistic aspect of secularism, Buddhist ethics was okay. It was not so bad, So imagine then finally, 20 years later, you come to MIT and you make a Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values. Is it? What is it?
That's correct. The Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values.
I like the transformative values.
Yeah.
That's just marvelous.
I didn't go to any faculty meetings, but I remember one anecdote from a senior colleague.
Yes.
Who has been teaching at MIT for almost 30 plus years.
Yes.
Very respected biological scientist.
Yes.
And I remember him coming to me and saying, you should feel really proud of yourself. And I said, why? And he said, in the last 25 years that I have been here, any conversation on ethics lasted for 20 seconds in faculty meeting. And the fact that you have a center now is a remarkable thing.
I know. Yes, it really is something. I remember one publisher called me up once. He was so excited when His Holiness wrote one of my favorite books of his, Ethics for the New Millennium, which I really loved that book. I was just thrilled about it. And he called me up. I didn't know him that well. He happened to be a publisher. And he calls me up. He says, Bob, I just have to tell someone. I'm so amazed and so proud of the Dalai Lama. I said, why? He said, well, I've been in publishing for 25 years, and I have never seen any book with the title Ethics in the title get on any kind of a bestseller list. He said, I've never seen it, such a thing. Can't happen in America. So anyway, good for the Dalai Lama. Did you have input in that book, by the way, Ethics for the New Millennium?
Not so much. We had some initial conversations, but not so much. I think Samdong Rinpoche did quite a bit.
Yes.
I actually dedicate a whole chapter in the book on him, and
I know
his
really
influence
like
in my thinking.
Yes.
And he's somebody who has deeply thought about ethics and had quite a fair amount of lengthy conversations with His Holiness as well.
Yes.
Both from a Gandhian perspective and also the role of ethics in education. So,
yes. Yeah, he Samdong Rinpoche, he's a little bit older than me, just a touch, but he would be a good first abbot of a new Nalanda, or president of the campus. He really would. But it's true, of course,
let's go make an offer.
Yeah, we will. Well, we're a couple of billion short, to put it that way. But George Soros gave $1 billion just lately, to Bard College, I think, through Bard College, to create a new kind of university that would be something different. And I'm not sure what he has in mind. I'm going to try to find out. I once turned down a luncheon with him. I met him a few times, and I was invited to one lunch, and unfortunately, I couldn't go. So I don't know. I asked for a rain check, but I don't know how to collect it. I would collect it and ask him, to make a Nalanda, because imagine a core curriculum where you have all the world religions giving their best ethical and self-restraint techniques and meditational and contemplative techniques and chanting and happiness techniques and whatever, turn the other cheek techniques. Yeah. And that's in the core curriculum, but not in the form of having to compete to convert people to the different traditions, just right. Using of the methods and comparing and interacting with them and leaving people with their own chapels like a universal kind of Church of World Religions they could have on the campus, where all of them had a chapel, right? Like some diamond-shaped thing like you have. And and then so you have a core curriculum that really changes people's ethical things, Every college president at the inauguration of the college talks about decency.
Yeah.
And they say, our graduates, decency, critical intelligence and creativity and decency. Those are the values. But there's no training in decency at all.
Yeah.
It's you just.
No, I think that's the unfortunate part. And when the Dalai Lama Center started in 2008, 2009, there was a remarkable episode in terms of the global financial crises that had happened, and there was a window where we could deeply think about ethics. And the problem is that people want very quickly to get back to normal, and so they simply recreate the same old problems, trying to create the same old normal. And coming back to the current environment, of course, they're part of normalcy that we want to get to, but this pandemic is also, I believe, an opportunity. When you look at these images of distant Himalayas being visible from once polluted cities in Punjab, and dolphins returning to waters that they haven't treaded in 30 or 40 years.
Yes.
People in California finally breathing clean air. These are signs that we should deeply think about, that let's not rush back to get back to the old normal, but take this opportunity to create a new normal. And part of that new normal should be thinking deeply about how we can reform and reframe education so that we can actually have a curriculum in character development or character building and decency. So it's not just blind expectations, but part of the training.
Definitely. Wonderful. Well, I totally agree with you. And I think we should be, it's amazing actually. Everybody, I was reading in Time magazine, the latest issue on the frontline workers, and all sorts of people they have 100,000 meetings on Twitter with 100,000 people, and they're sharing ideas, and of course music and art and things like that. Artists, of course, are more entertainers, and artists are more easily able to do that. But they're really people are creating different kinds of audiences through the net in this, because everybody's stuck at home. And so, I saw somebody on Twitter. I'm not unfortunately adept at it myself, but I did read one thing that one lady wrote there. I can't remember now. I should have kept it, but I don't know how to keep anything on Twitter. But she said she felt as if Mother Nature had sent everyone to their room to think about what they were doing and how they were living.
Yeah, it's time out at a cosmic level.
That's right. In India, in Indian families, do moms send naughty boys to their room to think about it? About when they
No. In all India, they just used to beat the crap out of them until they corrected their behavior.
I see. Well, that happened now and then in some quarters in America, but there is a famous tradition of sending, go to your room. That's
right.
Yeah. It really is a thing. So that's really what's happened to us. And it's so sad, of course, the people who are losing their lives. It's really, really terrible.
No, that is very unfortunate.
That's the very unfortunate part. So one can't make light of it in one way. But in one way, actually, we have to try to find the silver lining of such a thing. Yeah. And I feel somehow, I'm a deep fan of Greta Thunberg. She should definitely be, she would be first postgraduate or postdoc at the Nalanda University, or graduate student or something, in oracular testimony, because she is the Mother Earth's oracle, if there ever was an apt oracle. She is it. She should join the oracle squad, the Dalai Lama oracle squad. It doesn't have all the colorful apparatus and ritual thing, but she sure does speak for Earth. This small little being with this very little body. And imagine, she kept repeating the scientific dictum that in order to minimize the bloodshed and the death, mass death of millions of people in the tropical poor countries, in the so-called undeveloped world, in order to minimize that from the climate, we have to, and get back on track to 1.5 degrees maximum warming, which we've more or less reached, 10% every year for 10 years has to be diminished, right? That's the IPCC rule of thumb. The amount of carbon pollution has to be, and methane and so on, has to be decreased, greenhouse gases, by 10% a year for 10 years. And then we'll, as a planet, we can handle the already catastrophic things that are already happening. And this virus has created 10% for the last 4 months.
Yep.
Or 5 months, automatically. But of course, with this cost in life, it's very sad. But we shouldn't. We can see that it can happen, right? People should be able to see that it can happen. No smog. I don't know how Phoenix is, but I can show you a picture of Phoenix with smog. It's not nice, from Al Gore's type of lecture that he gives,
Right.
And Delhi, the air in Delhi must be, well, soon will be getting better. Now they're just getting, the wave is cresting or rising, I think, in Delhi. I'm very worried about it. I'm so happy that your mother and Shilpa and the other one, the other sister, she's also okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Is she in Delhi or is she out of town?
She's in Delhi, yes. Yeah.
She's in Delhi, but perhaps in a safe place. I hope so. And it decreased by 10%, and this is going to go on for another few months, I think, at least, in many countries. And I don't believe that China has really finished with it, frankly, personally. But I wouldn't to get into that. But there could be other waves, and for example, what about the Uyghur people and the Tibetan people? How are they doing? Have we heard of the Mongolians? In Inner Mongolia, we haven't heard a word about it, and we're not likely to. And it certainly spread there. So they're interned, lots of them, in big camps and things. So that's really frightening. Anyway. Yes, we have to go back to a new normal, and your book will help. Running toward
I hope so. I hope it's useful.
The adventure of an unconventional life, running toward a new normal, an unconventional normal. There's no reason we have to do all this ineffective and inefficient things.
Yes.
Really. I've been reading about the food system in industrial countries, and the pollution from the fertilizers and the chemical, pesticides, and which is spreading badly in India too, I think, as well as here. And how this produces, the people who are being killed off by this virus, a lot of them are ones with underlying conditions, right? So what are the underlying conditions? Living in a bad food environment. Right? It's not a race thing. It's they're stuck in bad food environments. They, the poor, the people with less facility, they are fed junk food, and this ruins their immune system, right? So we mustn't go back to that, And there's many things people can make money doing the right thing instead of making money doing the wrong thing. That's the key thing. I don't think we have to make people feel that they're all going to go broke by trying to make a new normal. A few people will just have to shift their industry, right? Running toward mystery. What will be the mystery of that? So by the way, I just want to say too, I was so touched, by your epilogue and your dad, because I am a dad, and I'm a grandpa. I actually have a great granddaughter too. Even though I was a monk for a while, I was not up to your standard. But it's so sweet, this final conversation. You don't want to read a little of that to us? I think you should read it. Come on, read a little. Can you read some? Did you hear me? Uh-oh. Have I lost the thing? Priyadarshi, are you there?
No, he's frozen.
What happened? What?
He's frozen, not us.
Oh no. Maybe we hit the time barrier. Was it set to turn off at a certain time? Hello? Is there anything we can do? I see his face. It is 2:00. Has been an hour. Was that what it was supposed to be scheduled as?
Yeah, hour 15.
Oh, hi. Are you there?
He's re-logging in.
He's what?
Logging in again.
Oh, he's logging in again? I wanted him to just read this. This is so nice, this epilogue. Or maybe we shouldn't read it because it gives away the story. Anyway, I wanted to conclude, the interview. I have a nice idea to conclude it.
Please. Sorry.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
I was having some computer glitches.
Oh, I see. What do we have a time limit, or should we stop at a certain time, or what?
No, we are on Buddhist time. People come.
Very good.
We continue our things.
Oh, very good. Well, because in conclusion, I was going to the end. I have a friend who's a literary person, and he says it's a new book. The first thing he does is he goes and looks at the last word in the book. And he's kind of a critic, the kind of person, Jonathan Cott. And I love it. Your last sentence here before the epilogue is, the real challenge is to bring this scattered family together to reach across the boundaries of our separate beliefs. I think you mean here the human family, right?
Right.
And separate beliefs with empathy and a shared understanding of ethics to learn to care for one another. So another is your last the actual word, but the last phrase is to learn to care for one another. So it's compassion. You end on compassion. That's wonderful. Then the epilogue, of course, is marvelous. And it reminds me, do you know the story about when Buddha was teaching the Shakyas?
No, please. Tell us all. Tell us.
Well, you're not the only Buddhist mendicant who made his dad miserable. Actually, Buddha outdid you.
I heard
outdid
Shakyamuni did that too.
He outdid you even, I think. Even worse, it was even worse.
Yep,
because not only did he not inherit the throne from his poor father, who had to serve until beyond the retirement age, but then he also took the grandson away to be a mendicant. And then there was no grandson, crown prince, And then the Sakya kingdom had a hard time a little bit. So anyway, his father was very upset. Shakyamuni didn't have the Dalai Lama to finally pacify the mind of his upset father, like you did. But you know what he did? I don't know if he did. I think maybe Maitreya Manjushri might have done it, some of the bodhisattvas. But when he was teaching the Shakyas in their hometown, and the father was so annoyed because father had catered the most delicious food, and the Buddha gave it away and went to some poor house and begged any old rice and dal, from the poor people. It was more annoying to the father. But what he did was, the 4 guardian kings, which is sort of like the Buddha's Santa Claus of the north, south, east, and west, the sort of wealthy, semi-divine or divine kings of the directions, north, south, east, west. And some of the bodhisattvas said to those kings, who also, because the gods used to like to listen to the Buddha's teaching. So he said to them, you guys go and sit near the door so that when Buddha's father comes in, he will see that you're there. And indeed, when Shuddhodana came into the teaching venue, who should be there but the 4 giant god kings, king gods or whatever you want to call them, but really like the most eminent beings he could think of, more or less, my son is teaching them, they're here to study with him, oh my, and this sort of calmed down gave his father peace, actually. There's a thing like that. So it's kind of like you introducing your mother and father finally to His Holiness, who is really, I think, like Shakyamuni in the world today. I think I'm sure you'll agree with me. In your next book, you will probably tell us like that. That's
the plan. Yeah. No, with the epilogue, my my co-writer Zara, I think she is also online somewhere. As I said, that it's not a strict memoir, because the latter part of the book I wanted to focus on teachers rather
Yes.
than just and the lessons learned. And so one of the things was, well, how should this particular episode, as in this particular book, end? And to my mind, this conversation came with my father, and I thought that would be a useful ending.
Oh, that's a huge thing. That's a huge
Yeah.
thing. Huge.
Yeah.
But people have to realize, some people get upset with mendicants because they leave the home life, the family life. But after all, they are then becoming kin with all beings, and they're making everyone their family, and because they're seeing beyond this life only, America really has to get over this one life routine, and this idea that really seriously, it's not necessary, it's not scientific. You should really tell them at MIT, or you can bring me up there if you don't want to get in trouble, I'll tell them. Just go ask them at MIT, which scientist at MIT, which Nobel Prize winning faculty member there has discovered the nothing that you go to when you die? Which one? Could you ask for that? Ask them that. And I like them to see, they only go by empirical discovery, right? Empirical discovery trumps, can't use that word very well nowadays, but anyway, it trumps theory.
Yeah.
So it's just a theory based on blind faith that you can be nothing. You, as a continuum of consciousness, can become nothing. You become nothing every night when you fall asleep, and then you keep being boring, something in a dream and something when you wake up. So no one has ever discovered nothing. And it's not an empirical discovery. It's not a scientific thing, therefore. It's just pure prejudice. And so everyone has to get over it. And in that context, your father had a lot of stress, but he learned something from you, as he says, and not just, shoes, he learned something from you. And he will learn in another life at one of your centers of ethics and human values, even if you can't recognize them, or certainly I can't. Maybe you can, you never know. And, his studies, his education is not over just because he passed away. How old was he?
He was a wonderful human being, very kind.
Absolutely, there's no doubt.
And, yeah.
How many years now has he passed?
He passed away in 2012.
So 7 years. So 8 years. So he might be a young woman or man of 7, 8 years. Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah.
Probably in his beloved India, I think.
Yeah.
And
Let's rebuild the Nalanda, then we'll send a search party.
That's right. Well, we might have to have a special faculty of a special division of people helping people find their reborn relatives. Some psychics and some people with powers that I don't have, but there are people who have those kind of powers, and they'll have to get to work on it. We can have a special faculty for that, I think, definitely. So it's lovely, really. I'm so happy to have this virtual book signing. Now you have to make an air sign. You have to do an air sign.
I think that's the best kind. It's like the Dzogchen signature.
There you go.
No track to be followed.
I think that is great. It really is. And
but thank you so very much, Bobla. Thank you so very much for this opportunity, and look forward to seeing you in person and meeting you again in person, and perhaps we'll have another conversation.
Yes, sir. I hope so. Let's do that. And when I get to India, when this is over, next time I come to India to meet the president, you and I must meet to plan our strategy to make the New Nalanda, make our translation center. Yeah. Prajnopaya. I consider myself a member of Prajnopaya now.
You are a member of Prajnopaya.
Yes, for those who don't know, this is
I think for those here in the audience who do not know this yet, Bob Thurman has had the rare thing, Professor Thurman, that he has been given the third highest civilian honor of India by the President of India. And so we are just waiting for the current mayhem to die down so that the prize ceremony can actually take place in in the
Well,
presidential
that's,
palace in New Delhi. So we are all looking forward to that day.
oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Padma Shri. I can't be Padma
Padma
Sambhava.
Shri, yes.
I can be Padma Shri.
Yeah,
That would be very nice. Only I mean, I don't deserve it at all, but
Then we have to redo your letterheads and business cards. It has to say
I know.
Padma Shri Professor Bob Thurman.
I know. I heard that. I'm going to do that. I'm also going to put Tenzin at the back of my name as
Yes.
as a nickname. So
Right.
I'm going to be Tenzin Bob Thurman, Padma Shri Tenzin Bob Thurman, like you were Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi. But you deserve it more than me. I think
Oh, no,
I don't know why they wanted to have a few foreigners. I guess you'll get one. I have no doubt. And there's bigger ones, the Vibhushan and whatever it's called. And it might help us make this translation center in Andhra Pradesh, and then also the new Nalanda. I really think there should be a new Nalanda at Nalanda. I really think
Yes.
so.
No.
And
I look forward to that day.
this will be later, and I think the Chinese, the Chinese leader who has finally come to their senses, they will be major donors as well as the Indians. I think that will be the day. And before I croak, I have to manage another decade or so. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
And have a great time in Phoenix. And do let us know when you're back on the East Coast. Okay.
We'll do that. Thank you so very much.
Okay. All the best.
Stay healthy,
Thank you, everyone who
Thank
was there. And see you again. Okay. All the best. Bye bye. Namaskar.
This video was brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menlo Retreat and Dewa Spa membership community. To learn more about the benefits of Tibet House membership, please visit tibethouse.us. Tashi Delek, and thanks for tuning in.